Hey Svetlana,
Hello, Arnie.
nice to see you again. How is it going for you?
It is going really well. How about you?
Oh, it's also good. Today is a bit of a tired day. Once again, woke up at 4 o'clock, but I'm fit for
Hmm.
chess. That should be a nice fitness program. There's fit for fun, fit for whatever, fit for chess. And you just have a garden chess, and you have to run to the clock and click it every time you make a move. I've done that. I can tell you, it's pretty exhausting. Huh. Okay.
Hmm.
We
Never
can
heard
share the
of that
millions with this grandiose idea. Anyway,
before.
what do you have served on your smart moves plate for us today?
Well, I thought that today, for I think, first time in our lessons, we could look at an opening.
Excellent. I love openings, and I hope you like it too at home. Yeah, openings are always something to look into, so that's a very
Mhm.
good idea. Let's go for it. Depending on the opening, by the way, I just have
Mhm.
to mention that. If it's like a sad, boring opening, but you're not the person who's making sad
Of
and
course
boring
not.
openings.
Of course not. Can you see the screen?
I can indeed.
Okay, well, let me put the cameras away. Okay, so the opening that I thought we could look at was the Scandinavian. It's It's for sure not a boring one. I'm not sure what your opinion on it is, but I know you don't play it for sure.
Yeah, I think we were talking briefly about it. I normally play the Black Madima against it, and yeah, Scandinavian is an interesting opening because some people claim it's like not playable, but of course it doesn't make sense to even mention that because even super grandmasters are playing this every now and then, maybe as a little surprise option or something, and it's played regularly almost. And it's
Right,
also
right.
something very good to counter the normal e4, I believe, if you're a
Hmm.
bit too scared to play Sicilian or e5.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually one of the oldest recorded openings that exist in chess. So it's a very old one. But of course, there are a lot of new modern developments in theory. So the way people played it 200 years ago is not the same way that we play it now. There are a lot more positional and strategic ideas that exist nowadays because back then, people mostly just played chess to attack. And it is a fairly good opening for that too. But now you can actually approach it from both a tactical perspective, and you can also have some positional games in it as well. So I thought I would show two games. One of them would be a tactical one, and the other one would be more of a positional approach to the Scandinavian. And well, like you said, many top players do play it, usually in like Blitz, Rapid. You don't see it in the candidates tournament, for
Hmm.
example, but it is still played. It is still played at high level. Sometimes, usually as a surprise opening, but I think honestly it can be played effectively at any level. Because honestly, most people, what I've noticed, I play it as black. I play many different types of Scandinavian. So there are, just to show, e4, d5. This is how the opening starts. And now usually white captures. This is going to happen probably 99% of the time. And here there are various ways to continue. Now you could take on d5 with the queen, and after knight c3, which is the main move, you can retreat to a5, you can retreat to d6, you can go to d8 also. So I've basically played every single type of Scandinavian,
Hmm.
and the one that is actually probably my favorite is not even capturing the pawn on d5 right away, but playing knight f6
I
here.
knew it. There's something into this. Yeah, I like that too. I like it a bit more. If I play it, that rarely happens, then I normally either go with another pawn sacrifice or getting the knight out. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is sort of a temporary pawn sacrifice. You usually get your pawn back, But in some lines where you don't, you have a lot of counterplay for it.
Mhm.
The most popular Scandinavian is the one with Queen A5, though. This is what most people play. But Knight F6 is still is still a popular line. It's played by many players, and we're about to see a game from Magnus. So I think it at least he has also played. So it is not so it is definitely not some random line.
Mhm.
And yes, the main idea of the Scandinavian is just to have an open play in the center from the beginning. From the beginning few moves. And the good part about it is that there's not as much theory in it as, for example, in the Sicilian. So that's, I think, one of the benefits of it. But there's still some ideas to know. What I've noticed is that a lot of people from playing it, I've played it for many years. What I've noticed is that most players as white, they have a general idea of what to do, but it's not like people regularly, brush up their Scandinavian theory, because it's people generally know what to do, and they think that usually you can just develop and just have a slightly better position. That is partially true, but not always. There are some tricky lines which do work in practice. So that's a belief that people have, is that you can just develop your pieces and be fine. And well, you can do that basically anytime as white. It's going to work with most openings, but with the Scandinavian, that's why people usually, I find, don't really study theory too deeply in it, because they just think they can be fine without it, or they just spend their time on other openings. So the first game that I wanted to show is one of the very tactical games that happened, and this is exactly why I like this Knight F6 line. This game pretty much demonstrates it really well. So it was played in the Pro Chess League. So this is still a rapid game, not a classical one, but the Pro Chess League is, I think, one of the more serious rapid events. So
absolutely, and if absolute top players, something beyond 2,400 and more, play an opening like this, you can, even with blitz games, I personally believe it's interesting to take a look at sometimes, but rapid games for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here the main move to reply to Knight F6 is D4.
Yeah.
You may be thinking that there is a way to defend this pawn with C4, which is, I guess we will take a look at this theory after the game, but this is a way to keep the pawn for now, but it is usually not that great to hold on to the pawn and try to stay up a pawn for the whole game, because we play a move like C6 and basically open up the center, and this is going to be exactly what you want to get out of this opening. So D4 is usually considered the main move, and now Magnus played Bishop G4, but this is called the Portuguese variation, and this is the one that actually I prefer. The main line, or I guess the more main move, is knight takes on D5. So just you regain the pawn back immediately, play knight B6, and go for something like
bit
that.
of an Alyekin pattern again.
Right. So if the pawn is standing on either this pawn standing on D6 or this pawn standing on E6, we actually get exactly the Alyekin type of positions. So yeah, which I like as well.
Yes.
Some people don't.
Yeah.
But yes, so this is one of the other options. But the really tactical one is this Bishop G4 line. This is called the Portuguese variation, because it was popularized by some two Portuguese players, a Grandmaster and an international master. They were playing it a lot in practice. And yeah, it's a very tactical line. So Bishop G4, this is the line I prefer as well. And this is the one that I will show today. So immediately we are attacking the queen, and very effective in bullet, by the way, if people are pre-moving. but that's just a side note. Of course, not going to happen in a serious game that people will lose their queen like that. But it's something to keep in mind for your bullet games. Um, but of course, white is going to defend from this attack with move like f3. So this looks like a weakness, and it is in a lot of cases, but it's a move that gains a tempo. So uh, white is trying to focus on gaining tempo here. There are
Can I quickly?
other options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The other options. So I can see the knight either going to f3, but probably e2 is not making a lot of sense. It's just blocking, and well, it's probably also playable. And then of course the bishop can go to e2 as well. Is there any variation? This is what I wanted to get to. Is there any variation where you just leave all the pieces except the queen and move the queen forward to, let's say, d2 or d3 maybe? Or have you ever seen that? Because
No, I don't see the queen ever moving to d3. Yeah,
probably
honestly.
doesn't make that much sense either again.
Yeah, it's you just gain back the pawn with no problems, basically, and you have much better development, right? You already have three pieces developed from capture. So yeah, you usually knight f3 does exist, and so does bishop e2. Actually, I might show after this game, like I can show the more in-depth theory, because this is just kind of the introduction, I guess, to this opening, just so you see what the play can be like.
Of course.
But yeah, we will take a look at knight f3 and bishop e2 after. f3 is one of the main moves here. Now bishop goes back to f5, so this is the second best square for it now. And in this game, white played c4. So what I said, this is exactly what we want as the player with black. So this is not, of course, losing as white or anything, but as a player who's playing this variation of the Scandinavian, you usually are the kind of person that wants to get some sort of attacking play, some open center, and this is why we play e6 here. So it is going to get a bit spicy. Now, Arne, can you try to guess what happens after g4? G4 is a typical move in these positions.
Immediately, I would take the pawn on d5 without even thinking, unfortunately. Or
the pawn
probably
on d5?
Or on g4, maybe.
Or on g4, yeah. With what?
With the knight.
Yeah. So knight g4, of course, it's a move that you probably think of immediately. And here, fortunately, it is actually good as well. So queen h4, and then we have this bishop e4, and you already have a better position here as black.
That's a nice one, yeah.
Would be great if white actually went for this g4 move, and it is very, very typical in these positions. So this is not a random blunder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's typical in these positions, but it's not good in this particular line because there's knight g4. The regular move is also bishop e3, just a normal developing move. But, well, then we just have our pawn back, and that just means you don't really have any opening problems. You just gain back your pawn on d5. You have a strong center. Pieces are developed. So this is not really that difficult of a position to play. But the more principled line is, of course, to take on e6, which is what happened in the game too. So we're already giving the second pawn. And do you think we're taking it back?
Well, if you ask me like this, probably not. We give a check in between.
No, we don't even give a check. So it's even more. It might be even crazier than you thought, but it's knight c6.
That is so funky.
Are you liking this line?
I love this.
Yeah, so knight c6, we're attacking on d4. This is the more important pawn to us than the one on e6. And basically, we are trying to just open the center to our advantage. We're just giving the pawns so that we have more time to develop our pieces.
Sure.
So the knight can now go to d4, b4, if allowed, whatever, depending on what white does. But we already have a lot of ideas here. The knight can come to c2 in some variations, and d4 is attacked right at this moment, so white somehow has to take care of that. If he defends with the bishop, then we can play knight b4.
Oh my
Now
god.
knight a3 is forced, and we now probably will want to recapture, and we play this position where only one pawn down, so not two. It's not too bad. Then we play something like bishop d6, for example. Now this f3 move, we can see, could be a bit of a problem for white in some cases. We can look, our bishop will be standing really well on this diagonal, and also the most important thing about f3 is that it's preventing the knight from going there. And if the knight isn't going there, then it's difficult to find where it is going, because e2 is hard, h3 you don't really want to go. So white just has some development problems for this pawn that we sacrificed, while we just continue our development. And well, this is one of the lines where you don't regain your pawn back, but I'm pretty sure you can tell why, because you're just having an easy development, and you have a lot more threats than the opponent for the pawn.
Nice.
d5 might seem like a scary move, but in reality it is already a mistake, because knight b4, our regular idea, is still here. E takes f7, king takes f7. Now knight a3 defending on c2, and we play bishop c5, and we are already actually clearly better here, because very hard to defend against all the rook e8 idea, and the black king is pretty much staying in the center and not getting castled anytime soon because of this bishop on c5.
Oh wow, so many threats. Beautiful. Doug, just what is actually on the two moves you were showing? What is the counter on the queen a4 check? I mean, you just play c6, I assume.
Yeah.
And then and then even your queen is out of shape, because when you take back, you can.
If you recapture, I'm not even sure you need to recapture. You can just give the check, probably. Something like that. There is this queen is going to.
It's almost mate. Yeah. My gosh, if it's not even mate. Yeah.
So nice. Queen a4 usually not scary.
Okay.
In the game, e takes f7 happened, which I consider a bit of an inaccuracy. But it looks like a very natural move to capture on f7, right? And force the king to go to f7. But actually, it is white's king who is now more in danger than black's king. And all because, not because the black king is amazed at being at f7, but it's just that white has no pieces in play, and nobody can attack it. So therefore, it is not in danger. The game continued with bishop e3. Now we just make every move we make has to be active, developing move. This is the spirit of this opening, basically.
Yeah, and you have all four minor pieces out, and you kind of almost have a little king's attack, and you also artificially made castling very soon too. Nice.
Right. We are going to bring our rook to e8, and then the king can safely go back to g8. The only thing is, we are missing 2 pawns for it. But
those 2 pawns, come on.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it is worth it here. I would take this position as black anytime. Now, in the game, white played king f2.
Oh.
But in the event of knight c3, which I guess looks like the more typical move, we are still playing the exact same thing, rook e8. And now the problem is that once you defend the bishop, the pawn on d4 is hanging. So this is definitely not something that white wants to go for. So this is why king f2 has been played. Rook e8, of course, we are still playing the same idea. And now white played knight c3, which was actually a bit of a big mistake. And can you try to guess what Magnus played next here?
Okay, so let me think. Now, if I take and I take... back. Oh, I believe there must be a rook sacrifice at one point. It looks as if boom, boom, boom. No, that's not working. Huh. Have you at home seen what the mistake is here? Even the computer says in analysis it's a blunder, literally. It doesn't look like a blunder, but there must be something to it. So
Yeah, this is where it gets tactical.
Yeah, indeed. So when there is a check, first I take, then there's a check. Okay, okay, let me think. I think if I take the knight with the bishop, and it will be taken back, then I can give a check with my knight on e4. It takes back, and then the queen goes to h4 with a check. Then
Probably.
if the pawn goes to g3, I take on e4 and threaten to take the bishop on e3.
I think queen f3 defends everything.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a bit too overeager. No, I cannot find it. I feel bad.
I'm sure you see the first move, but you just don't see the what is coming after that.
Oh. So yeah, rook takes e3 was my
Rook
very
takes e3
first
is the obvious, it's the
intuition.
first thing you look at, right?
Yeah.
But here's where it gets a bit difficult. So here, the tactic is, this is what Magnus played in his game as well. So the tactic there is that knight takes d4 is actually working out. There's a lot of, there's a few other moves, not a lot, but a few other moves that also win. For example, bishop c2, I think looks very nice because you're distracting the queen. And if the queen takes, then of course we're going to take on d4 here, and already there's going to be checkmate here.
Trouble, yeah.
Bring the rook in,
or at least the queen is gone. Yeah.
Right. So queen d2, for example, not taking runs into an h4 problem.
Oh, come on.
Queen g5 and rook e8, and we're winning the queen on d2. So there are so many tactics here. This was another way to win, but he captured on d4, which probably is just as good, if not better. The thing is, on queen d4, which is a bit hard to see, is queen e7. And now the king actually has nowhere to go without losing the queen. Right, so he goes here. There's bishop c5.
Yeah.
And if he goes onto this one, then there's rook d8. So the queen e7 is the winning move here. This was, I think, the difficult part to see, was that you could sacrifice the knight and later play.
And not go for immediate checkmate or check or whatever. Yeah, it's just this subtle move, knight, queen to e7, and then the threats are overwhelming.
Right. So he didn't take in the game. It's honestly, it's already lost for white.
Wow.
At this point. So he's down material. I'm pretty sure it's he only has a bishop for a rook and pawn. But in this type of position where the king is all over the place, you already know that there is definitely some tactic that's working out for black here.
Bishop c5 is nice.
Bishop c5, knight a4, and bishop c2 is the way it continued, and white saw nothing better than already to give up the queen for some pieces, but it wasn't enough. It was a queen for right now. White has a rook, a bishop, and a pawn, but this is not enough with a king like that, because the queen is in its strongest area where the opponent's king is under attack. So this is where the queen is definitely stronger than the pieces, especially that white's pieces are just standing there completely undeveloped.
Terrible. They can never get out of there.
Right. So this is, the game continued for some more moves, one more sacrifice. and it ended soon, and Magnus's opponent just resigned. So I think this is one of the games that really shows the spirit of this variation.
Yeah,
And
the
this,
Portuguese variation. I haven't heard of it before. I'm so glad you showed this to me. So this is this thing which you are, not you, of course. I hope you at home are not like me, which is only sticking to your own openings and just pushing everything else aside and getting new variations with your own openings. You have to open your horizon. And every time I'm learning something about a new opening, out of a sudden a whole new world is opening, literally. That means I see even those nice tactics, and there's so many tactics, so beautiful tactics there. I like this idea of the bishop, and you see it first and you think like, meh, you just put the pawn in between, why? But it's good, it opens up everything, you have this development. So yeah, that's very, very nice. Can't wait
yeah.
for the next one.
The next one, I thought to show sort of a different side of what can happen. It's not always going to be tactical fireworks like in the last game. There can also be some positional play in it. This we will not. It will not be too long of a game. It's not.
Fair
There's
enough.
not as many variations here to look at, is what I mean. There's not some tactics. The reason why it's starting with c4, it's not like. It's always going to, but it was just a transposition. So
Okay.
this is how it happened, and it ended up being a transposition here into.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this
No.
position? Because you don't play the Caro-Kann. This is the Caro-Kann pen of attack.
Interesting.
So it's
Okay.
transposition into many different things. So this is how it would have played out if we had started with our knight f6 Scandinavian. So right, white doesn't have to capture the pawn. We would be very happy if they do, but if they don't, with something like d4, this could be the exact transposition to the game. And this is the game between Gelfand and Morozevich, again, two very strong players. And interestingly, this was a blindfold game. So I am always so amazed by whenever I find those Amber blindfold games in the database, because I find it unbelievable that they're still able to play at such a high level, and when they're both playing blindfolded. But this is still
as if it doesn't even matter if there's a board or pieces or not. That's how, I mean, everyone would beat the hell out of us blindfolded, which is scary on its own, I believe. But yeah, it's crazy. Can you play blindfold?
Yes, I have. I've played blindfold in Ukraine. We actually had we did practice it more often, I find.
Nice.
And we used to play blindfold simuls, like not a lot, just 2 or 3. I think 2 or 3 boards is what I would be able to do, but depends on the opponents, of course. If I'm playing someone the same as myself, I would prefer to just have one board.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it depends. Probably, I think actually what I do is I practice because my brother, he knows how to play. Yeah. He's not a professional player. He's still very young. He's 10, and we can't really play against each other, right? So what we do is I play blindfolded against him, and at least it makes it more interesting.
Oh, this is such a great idea. I have to do this with one of my brothers too.
I mean, I still win all the time, but it makes it more fun for him, and it's mental practice for me. So we like to do that. Maybe I should actually play, I don't know, maybe 4 games or something against him, so that he has 4 or like 5 boards, and he plays on all of them and he can see all of them, but I can't. I feel like
Nice
that would
idea.
level the score.
Oh, that's gonna be tough for you.
Yeah, something like that we could try. But yeah, it's not something I always practice, but I think it's very amazing how some people are able to do that. I don't know what the record is, but it's in the tens of boards.
I think it was even 60, 62 or 66 or
Uh-huh.
something. Something
Yeah.
absolutely
I
insane.
was thinking like 30, like over 30, something like that. Yeah, it's something crazy. So yes, it's amazing how some people are able, but this doesn't really take away from the quality of the games still. But this one was more positional than the tactical one that we just saw. So this is the same. This is a transposition into the Caro-Kann pen of attack, and the line that I recommended here was G6. There's different ways to develop here. G6 is one of them, and now white played Queen B3. So what I honestly find, I don't usually get this transposition into the pen of attack from the white side. Usually white would only do this if they play the pen off as white against the Caro-Kann, and they recognize that they can transpose into it. That's usually what they do, but yeah, I don't personally haven't seen it often, but it is of course possible, and this is why we can still look at this game. So next, black played knight a6. That's one of the possible ways of developing the knight. It looks a bit strange, but the knight has a lot of prospects.
Purpose, yeah. I'm just seeing immediately, like, if you take the knight and then there's 2 double pawns on the corner.
I don't think taking the knight is actually that great, because first of all, you give up the bishop pair, and also second important detail is that the bishop didn't come from f1, right? The bishop already developed
it's
itself.
like a double move, yeah.
So yeah, you made a double move with the bishop. The b file, I think it's good for black, that it's actually open. The rook is going to come there. I think this should be not be something to be scared about for black.
Yeah.
So yeah, bishop f3 happened instead to defend the pawn on d5. But in this knight of 6 Scandinavian, as you could have noticed, we don't exactly care about that pawn too often. So we just leave it there. We're going to win it eventually. There's no way that white will keep it all the way to the middle, to the end game. So queen b6, this is why this was a more positional type of game, because queens got traded early on, and it was a calm endgame play until the rest of it. Eventually, black did get back the pawn. So you notice it doesn't matter if you don't win it in the first 3 moves. You can win it eventually as long as it still stays a weakness. So this is what happened here. Black still won that pawn, and the game it was just a regular end game that continued. So yeah, this is not exactly the most exciting game with a lot of tactics to look at, but it still has some positional ideas that you can maybe remember for the future, and just the pawn structure could also be useful if you play this particular line. So this is not exactly theory anymore, but yeah, just to show how the game ended. It was equal throughout, so that end game that we went to after the queen trade, it was basic. It was just equal almost the whole time until black just started to outplay his opponent. His opponent made few inaccuracies and ended up being a win for black after some tactic. Can you try to see what black did here?
So what did happen here? Knight goes to e4, attacking the rook. But maybe that's not. Oh yeah, it's actually pretty clear. I guess you just take the bishop on h4, and it's a mate threat, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You sacrifice the rook, and you can already go for checkmates. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how the game ended. Yeah. So this I wanted to quickly just show this game um, to show to people that it's not always going to be tactical as exciting as in the Portuguese variation. It obviously depends on what white does as well. You can always try to complicate matters. You can always pick different lines, but it's an opening. The Scandinavian is an opening for every taste, so you can play it from a positional point of view and from a tactical one as well. So it really just depends on the lines, on the sub variations that you are going to pick there. So you asked me one thing about the Portuguese variation of what happens here if white doesn't play f3.
Yeah. I just wanted to, because I think f3 is. I'm always happy when my opponent plays one of the f pawns forward and opens up the king a bit more, blocks the knight and stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
it's subjectively best, I believe, to play f3, which is why people play it. But yes, I do understand why you want to know about the other variations. So if knight f3, we actually don't have any problems gaining back our pawn. We're just going to take on d5, play knight c6, and the main idea of the Scandinavian is basically to always attack this d4 pawn.
Okay, and how often? I mean, the approach for Scandinavian to me is that you will have a long castling at one point, more often than short castling.
Yes, in these variations where white just developed normally with not really any main lines that you have to know the theory in. If white just plays some calm moves, so knight f3, bishop e2 are considered the calm moves, then yes, you are most likely going to go for long castling. c4 is already not the calmest move, but very typical here. You can retreat to either f5 or to h5. I think I like f5 better here. And then later, the plan is, of course, to play long castle and e5. You can sometimes, if your opponent is not careful, win the d4 pawn. So you can even stay up a pawn.
Okay.
Sometimes. So yeah, you can win the d4 pawn if white is not careful. And later you can have an attack on white's king side, and white is going to try to have an attack on your queen side. So knight f3 usually not problematic because you just win the pawn back with the queen. Bishop e2, I actually see this very often, even though f3 is probably technically the better line. But I see this very often because I feel like this is the reaction that you would have as white if you're seeing this for the first time, for example. That's probably what you are going for, is bishop e2, because you just think, well, you can't be worse here. And it's true, it's going to be around equal, which I think is good for black, because that's usually the point of when you're playing as black, is you want to equalize and have a good playable position with counterplay for yourself. You recapture with the queen. So just to say, you don't always recapture with the queen on d5.
I think
it's going to depend.
Knight e2 is probably also another option, and then castling.
Oh, I meant capturing on d5.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was one move.
But knight e2, of course, also an option. I think it doesn't really change much. We can still play queen d5. We can still play knight d5. I think queen d5 is better.
No, the only difference probably is that white might even be able to just castle now and then
Yeah, it's just a different way of developing.
yeah,
Here, the knight is standing somewhere on g3 or f4, wherever it wants to go, and there the queen is standing there, and the knight is
I
on.
gotcha. Okay.
It's just a different way of developing.
Mm.
Yeah.
So let's
So
take a quick look at queen e2, queen d5. Okay, the knight goes to f3. Okay, I got yeah.
e6.
And then
Later,
e6.
you are going to play knight c6, long castle. That's your plan. That's always the plan.
d6. So yeah, and the scary part about this is, of course, that there's if you, the queen is always something to take an to look at a bit more from a white position and maybe even be able to capture this piece. No. I mean, if you're not, how often are you in trouble with the moves of your queen when you're playing the Scandinavian?
So, you're saying that the queen might be trapped sometimes?
Yeah. Is that even a thing, or doesn't it happen at all?
It can be a thing if you put your queen on the wrong spots.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, it can be. But usually not in this knight f6 line. After c4, which is the way to put the queen to bother the queen, you go to either f5 or h5.
Yeah.
On h5, after the bishops have traded in this particular bishop e2 line, after the bishops have traded, your queen is not really in danger.
Okay.
So it can safely go to h5. There's no discovered attacks on it. And in this type of position, you would actually go for rook g8, g5, g4.
I like it.
White is going to try for d5, I think. Also try to attack you on this side of the board. Well, you're both attacking each other, and it's a fun game. So yeah, this is how it goes. Some other things we haven't looked at yet is if d4 doesn't happen. So just to quickly show, knight c3 is not dangerous. This is actually a transposition to the Alekhine. e4, knight f6, knight c3, d5. This can transpose from that opening as well. So there's a lot of transpositions that can happen here. c4, c6, and then d4 is the Caro-Kann-Panov attack, which is what we looked at in the game. This is the same way as it would arise from the Caro-Kann. And if d takes c6, this is one of the other important things to know. I'm going to tell you this barely ever happens because people are usually scared to take a second pawn. But if someone isn't scared, that's great for you because this is exactly what you want.
Because they should be scared.
Because they should be scared, yeah. After e5. So this is a very, very important idea here, is to not let d4 happen. If you play more passively with e6, for example, then you're allowing d4, and that kills the whole purpose of your pawn sacrifice. That kills the whole purpose of the opening. So you have to play e5, and this e5 move is really strong because there's never d4 happening anymore. You can sometimes have e4 ideas yourself, and you just have very good control of the center. And after d3, you can play bishop c5. That's one of the ideas. Or you can even go for this e4 move. If you don't want the queen trade, then don't go for it. But this is a good...
oh, yeah, nice.
This is a rather good endgame, which some people... I've had this in some like fast like blitz or bullet games, and people just don't sense the danger here usually as white because it looks fine, whatever. You're in the endgame already, traded queens, your king should be safe. But not always. Not always. We're getting castled next, bishop c5, and there are definitely some threats there. And it's just a pawn. You're usually going to get it back because of your queen, because of your piece activity. That's how it goes. One more, I think, is bishop b5. Not a very. This is not a very.
I think I've seen this. Yeah, I've seen okay, bishop d7. I've seen c6 takes and
that exists
takes
too.
with the pawn, which I thought was funky.
Yes, this is funky and this does exist. This is not something that I play. Maybe it's worth further investigation, but I haven't. I don't play this. I prefer just bishop d7.
Yeah.
It's not really a problem if the opponent captures, because you just take back with the queen and you're winning the pawn on the next move. And
Okay.
remember, if they just defend that pawn with c4, then you already know what to do. So taking is not really a problem. If they come back to c4, for example, to defend the pawn temporarily, you are going back to g4, back to the Portuguese roots, not the same. This is one dangerous line that I think you need to know if you play the knight f6 Scandinavian, is in this line, in this bishop b5, bishop c4, f3. So this is already pretty far in, right? White has to play bishop b5, then go back exactly to c4, and then still play f3. So this is already won't always happen. But g4 here now, the thing is, you have to go back to c8, which is something that you would never guess if
True.
you're playing for the first time. It's something I would never guess
Me
either.
neither. I would
There,
blindly go to g6, but then
exactly.
there is the threat of h4 probably.
Actually,
No.
f4 probably more unpleasant.
Yeah,
So
it's even
yeah, because
faster.
on h4 might not be bad either way, but you
You
have
can still
h5.
escape easily, yeah.
You
Yeah,
still
yeah.
have h5. So yeah, f4 is unpleasant, and I would not really recommend to play this position. So that's the one detail to remember, is bishop c8. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had this. I definitely have never had this in a classical game, but this still can happen. And bishop c8 looks like the move that you really don't want to make, but you
100%
probably
not, no.
should.
And after g5, for example,
Oh,
then...
that's simple. You gain back the pawn.
Oh, okay. I didn't even see
That's why you
that.
went
My
to
fault, my
c8 and
fault.
not to
I
d7.
thought the knight even also has to retreat, but that's of course not the case, luckily. Okay,
Yeah, the thing is, knight c3, because then they're defending the
sure.
pawn. c6, we do need to open up the center. If we're not able to win that pawn back, then we're always playing that c6 move. And continue to play the position in the way of e5, bishop c5, and white can have trouble with his castling. You have some piece development, still down a pawn. So this is one of those few lines when you are down the pawn, and you're not having that same beautiful attack as we have seen previously. But this is why I'm saying that this g4 line is pretty interesting. Something this is something that you can maybe even try to play as white if you ever see this, and see if your opponent actually knows to retreat to c8. Because after the c8 retreats, you're fine. You have compensation for the pawn. But it's a bit more this is one of the more complicated lines. So there are a few more to look at. How much
I think
time?
this is a good place to stop it now, because that is already a lot, and otherwise you're almost making an own course out of this, which you
Yeah,
have
I just
already
wanted to
done.
make more of an introduction to the opening. So if you think we got the main idea of the opening,
Definitely, I like this variation a lot, and I am the question is when to try this out. Probably in a blitz game or two or something like that, and see how it works. Would you advise people to try out openings they have never ever played, to get a bit of a open the horizon, the cliche word once again? Or would you say, how about you stick to those openings you know already and really get into them a bit more? Or probably depends, I assume.
I guess it depends more on the player.
Yeah.
I personally always liked trying new openings. I never like playing the same thing all over again. For some people, it works really well because they think they already have a repertoire and they've found their ideal openings that work really well for their style, and they just want to keep playing them. That's okay if that works best for them. But I've always thought it's more interesting and more enriching to play different to play different things. So yeah, I would generally recommend to play various things because you never know until you try. So
very good word, very good
thank you.
life lesson after all too. Yeah, so okay, get out there, try out some new openings. I think this is a very good point you're making. And yeah, this was super interesting. Thank you so much for showing us your smart moves once again. And I'm wishing all of you a lovely rest of the week, and we see each other very likely next week again.
Mhm.
Bye bye.